bookworms! Welcome to my June wrap-up video. I mentioned earlier that I had moved and now I'm commuting, so I have a ton more time to spend reading. There were actually about 2 weeks for the beginning of the month where I did not have any time to read, which you will find shocking when you see how many books I did read without reading for 2 weeks. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get right into it. The first book that I read this month is Paper Towns by John Green. I wanted to read it before the movie was coming out, which is sometime next month, so that's why I decided to pick it up. It was a really quick read. I probably read it in like 1 to 2 days. This is the third John Green book that I have read. I read The Fault in Our Stars and Looking for Alaska, and now I've read this one. I definitely liked the other two a lot more. I was enjoying Paper Towns up until the ending, and I really just did not like the end, so I only gave it 3 out of 5 stars just because I did enjoy the beginning, but it was definitely not my favorite one of his books. There were aspects of it that were good. I definitely enjoy like some road tripping, and I thought that the characters were very similar to his other characters because he does kind of tend to write the same kind of people over and over again, but I enjoy reading them, so in that sense it was fine. It wasn't my favorite John Green book, but I am glad that I did get to read it before the movie came out, so I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read this month is Undertow by Michael Buckley, and this is the first book in... now I can't remember what it's called. It might be the Undertow series. It was really interesting. It was a dystopian novel that I hadn't really heard too much about. I haven't seen any other booktubers talk about it. I haven't really seen any other bloggers write reviews on it. So I was really excited to get the opportunity to just read something that was new and different that I hadn't heard about like at all. It followed a main character named Lyric Walker who is living in Coney Island in New York, not on New York. She lives in a dystopian time where the beach was invaded by people, or like mermaid type people that came out of the ocean that are called the alphas, and they've tried to integrate the two races of like humans and alphas, and they're going to school together, but it's very dangerous, and there are groups that are completely against the alphas, and it's just like not a place that you would really want to be. You find out like within the first chapter that Lyric's mother is actually one of the alphas that was sent to New York about 20 years ago to try to scope out like what was going on. So Lyric has a lot of conflicts going on because she wants to protect her mother, but she also is living in this society. And it ended up being a really interesting read. I don't know if it's maybe because I haven't read a dystopian book in a while, but I found it to be extremely enjoyable. I'm really looking forward to the second book, and I posted the cover that they released recently for it, and it's gorgeous, so I'll link that down below. And I gave Undertow 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read is Days of Blood and Starlight by Laini Taylor, and this is the second book in the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy. I definitely enjoyed the second book more than the first book. There were parts of it that were challenging just because it was so heartbreaking, but already having that attachment to the characters and a good chunk of background on the story, it just ended up being like a much quicker read for me, and I really enjoyed the direction that the story is going in, so I am definitely looking forward to reading the third book, which is huge, when I have the opportunity. And I gave Days of Blood and Starlight also a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read is The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Ahdieh. I couldn't say her name in my TBR video either, so I'm gonna stop attempting it here. But this book was so good. I actually got the synopsis a little bit wrong in my TBR video. What happens is we have our main character, Shazi, who volunteers to be the Caliph's new bride after her friend had been killed by him, because we find out that the Caliph takes a new bride every single night, and there's never been anyone that has made it to the dawn, and Shazi ends up being the first person to do that. So her story is really interesting because you're trying to find out like why it is that he had killed all of these other women. There's just tons of like secrets, and it's a retelling of 1001 Nights. So it was just a really, really fantastic read. It was different than a lot of other things that I've read. I really, really enjoyed reading about these characters. Like, they were very diverse, and Shazi was a really engaging main character. She was very strong and like very strong-willed and quick-witted, and she's just just different than what I'm typically used to. So it was really refreshing to read about her. And I gave The Wrath and the Dawn 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read this month is The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. This is the first book in the Chaos Walking trilogy, and I really liked it. It had a very slow start for me, but then once I really got into the story and got to know the characters, it was really good, and there were just lots of shocking things that were happening toward the end. And I've heard that the first book is slower than the next two, so I'm really looking forward to continuing this trilogy because I've heard that it just keeps getting better. But Patrick Ness's writing is just amazing. Like, he knows what he's doing. So I really, really enjoyed The Knife of Never Letting Go. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and I'm really looking forward to finding out what's going to happen to these characters. The next book that I read this month is Rebel Belle by Rachel Hawkins, and I was really looking forward to reading this because I've heard a lot of other booktubers talk about it, and it did not disappoint. I felt like I was reading Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like, it was just so fun, and there were so many pop culture references. It's about this girl who's like a normal teenage girl, but she's like the homecoming queen, and she's very concerned about like lip gloss and shoes and stuff, and then she just magically gets these superpowers, and her entire life changes, obviously. And just like seeing her adjust to it, and well, she has these powers because she's trying to protect an oracle, and everything just comes together on this one cotillion night, which I love reading about because I've never been to like a cotillion or anything like that, but the OC definitely got me to be fascinated in cotillions. So it was just really, really interesting. This main character is also very, very quick-witted, and like I said, there are just so many references that it was just so enjoyable to read. I really, really, really loved it, and I gave Rebel Belle 4 out of 5 stars. Oh, actually, I read the acknowledgements after I finished the book, and I found out that Rachel Hawkins tried to sell this novel as Legally Blonde meets The Terminator, so that's obviously like just perfect. And if I had known that beforehand, I would have read it like the day that it came out. The next book that I read is Nantucket Red by Layla Howland, and this is the second book in the Nantucket Blue series. I don't want to give anything away because it's the second book in the series, but it was so good. The main character, Cricket, returns to Nantucket, and she just took everything that I loved about the first book, like the setting and the characters and everything. Like, she made them so complex and just so interesting that it was a pleasure to read. So she took all of that and then just built upon it with this extra story, and I think she did a fantastic job of describing the way that things are for them at the point that they are in life, because it's the summer before college, so there's a lot of adjusting going on and finding yourself, and it was just so good. Like, amazing. I'm so glad that I got to read this, and I really, really wish that she would write more of them, because there's a thing that happens at the end, and I would just love to read about their next year. Like, oh my god, it would be the best. So I gave Nantucket Red 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read is Amy and Roger's Epic Detour by Morgan Matson. I have wanted to read this for a while, but it wasn't on my TBR for the month, and then Maureen Keevy, she started the month of Matson for June, and once I started watching those videos, I was like, oh my god, this is just the perfect time. Like, if there's any opportunity to read this book, it's now. So I decided to just go for it and do it, and it was so good. I'm so glad that I did it. It's about these two characters, Amy and Roger, and Amy lost her father, and she thinks that it's her fault, so she's just having a lot of trouble like coping with that loss, and her mother moves to Connecticut, so she's been very lonely, and Amy is terrified of driving. She doesn't want to do it, so when her mom tells her that she's going to be needing her to drive their car from California across the country to Connecticut, Amy is like not really into that idea, but her mom tells her that this guy Roger is going to be the one that's driving, and the two of them set out on this road trip. The mom pre-planned everything, but once they get in the car, they start thinking about how they haven't really been outside of California and experienced a lot of America, so they decide to take this major detour, and it's just such a heartwarming story. Like, there were actual tears when I was getting toward the end of the book. It was so good. It was, oh my gosh, there were so many feelings, and it was just amazing, and I love it. And Morgan Matson is definitely one of my favorite writers at this point. So I give Amy and Roger's Epic Detour 5 out of 5 stars. Then the last book that I almost completely read in June is Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. Oh, my nails match the cover. Everyone seems like very into Outlander, and I don't know what is, if it's like me or something, but I am just really struggling with this book. It's just not really holding my interest. I am about 400 pages into it, so I'm like a little bit less than halfway done. I don't know if maybe it picks up at the end and that's why everyone's like really excited about it, but I don't know. Like, it's just, I'm really having trouble with this book. It's about, the main character's name is Claire, and she accidentally time travels back to the 1700s in Scotland, and she meets this guy, Jamie, and they have this huge romance going on. But she's already married in her current time period, and there's a lot of her like sleeping with this guy in the past, and I don't know if she's like rationalizing it because her husband's technically not alive in the 1700s, but it's just like not for me. Like, I don't know, it's just not really like, I'm gonna finish it because I've already read half of it. It's only another 400 pages. I'm gonna power through it, but I'm just not like, at this point I would kind of give it a 2 out of 5 stars. So that was my June wrap up. I would love to know what you guys have been reading for the month if you want to tell me in the comment section below. And you can always like my video or subscribe to my channel. That would be really cool of you. And I will see you guys soon with a new video. Bye!